Hi, I'm Marc Daniel Nelson here with MakeMineMusic. I have a song here by the artist Brandon Barty that I'm mixing currently, and it made me think about sharing this acoustic guitar template. For when I'm mixing acoustic guitar in digital, I come across a lot of issues. One is I seem to never be able to get it to sound like the way I get it when I get it on analog tape. Even when I'm mixing it with analog tape saturation and stuff, it's not doing the overall collective of what I hear analog tape does to acoustics. I feel that with tape, the acoustic guitar is really magical sounding. And in digital, you get this punch and this brightness and sharpness in the transient, but it's really hard to tame. And sometimes compressing it too much or over compressing it will add way too much artifacts, and it'll sound flat and pumped and just not very exciting. So I've applied a handful of techniques to a chain of plugins that is in combination allowing me to get a very similar sound that I get when I track acoustic guitar on tape. I want to dive in a bit and show you a little bit of the song as is with the acoustic chain I have now. Then I'll reassemble the song without the chain and we can talk about what I did.
Desert, and I don't understand why the wind's blowing cold, but it's warm in the sand. So I stare at the stars.
Let's dive in a little bit and see what we got under the hood of the acoustic guitar. Now in my chain here, what I'm trying to do is tame the transients, the aggressive. As an acoustic guitar being a very percussive instrument, you're trying to make sure that you're not getting too much of the overall spikiness. And sometimes when you're miking acoustic, you get a lot of that emphasis on the spike. So I want to tame that in a pleasing way, a little bit of compression, not too much, because that will completely destroy the entire integrity of the sound of the acoustic. So you want to create almost a color with compression, then a transient shaping element, and then maybe a little bit of a tape saturation thing that will cause a little bit of the warmness of it, and then maybe some dynamic EQ at the end or in the middle, depending on where you're at, to tame some of the low beefiness and some of the top information of it. Let's open this up. The first plugin I like to use on acoustic is this soft tube tape plugin. The reason why I like it is because inserting it into the channel, it doesn't sound nearly as aggressive as a lot of the other tape plugins. By chance, I plugged this in as an accident and I just ended up falling in love with it on acoustic guitar. I'm going to take off everything and solo the acoustic and just listen to it in and out. The cool thing about this plugin is it lets you see and meter what the THD is doing, which is the harmonic distortion and the element of what it's doing to the track. And it almost reads as if it's a compressor. So it shows you how much it's taking out. Now you can put the color in a little bit more or out. You can change the type of tape. B's a little more mid-range. And change the tape speed, which will help change the EQ curve a tiny bit. In general, I just want to add a little bit of glue. It's very subtle. That's out. It just pulls the acoustic guitar up a little bit and makes it a little more forward. Now after that, I feel like, okay, I want to add a little bit of EQ. I want to add a little bit of body at the bottom end. I want to take out a little bit of the boominess. That's around 280. And then I want to do some of this shelving top band stuff, which will help tame some of the harshness. And then after that, compress it, tighten it up. And then the final thing is to bring in the Trans-X by Waves and take a little bit of that harsh clickiness. Not too much, but enough to tame it where it ends up falling into the master chain in a very pleasing way. So let me take out the EQ and put it back in and hear what it does. So that's with it in. Taking a tiny bit there, and a lot of that shrilly harsh stuff. It sounds real nice and pleasing. Let's pull in the compressor next. I'm doing this with level, but I'm also adding just a tiny bit of compression, maybe at the very loudest, a dB. It's probably my favorite compressor and setting for acoustic guitars. You can hear the reverb on the acoustic, and that is the Abbey Road plate, this guy right here. I just have a little bit going into that feed, and it sounds really good. It makes it sound really warm and natural. The last thing I want to do is take some of that harsh clicking, just so it smooths it out a little bit. Now, this is such a fast transient thing. It works very different than a transient designer. Transient designer seems to be able to get stuff to be really punchy and take a little bit out, but it doesn't seem to work as fast as the Trans X does. That's why I like to use this on acoustic guitar and kick drum. Let's hear it in the track.
Alone in the desert, and I don't understand.
I'm going to take out the Trans X and see what it does.
Blowing cold.
See how it sits in front of the vocal?
So I stare at the stars till they smile.
Pulls it back just enough.
It's a feeling
Now the other thing to consider is to know that when you're dealing with acoustic guitars, sometimes you're playing really aggressively and really hard. And the track can be really dense, and if you can't hear things, certainly, you want to compress it more to get it out in front. Now, if there's synthesizers and drums, everything going at it, compressing it a little harder is obviously what you need to do. So just make sure that you go within reason what your taste goes with, but try to add things in little steps instead of adding a ton of things on one issue. Now, I've basically done a lot of compression with 3 different ways. One is a tape, one is EQ with multiband, one is an actual compressor doing compression of the overall content, and the other one is hyper-focus on the transient of that. And they're all kind of ducking things as a percussive element like acoustic guitar or drums. You need to be able to be really precise with what you need to hear. Instead of just plastering a big compressor over everything and hitting it 5 dB, you're losing a lot of that momentum, a lot of that dynamic, and by doing it in little areas, you're hitting it really hard. That's pretty much it. I will share these presets with you guys so you have a little bit of an idea to start with. And just have fun with the plugins.